Welcome to Q&A practice. And we will start with the court. Ready? Here we go. First of all, what report do you propose to give him? The ABC report. Show it to me. You don't have to bring it up close. Just show me what report you're talking about so that the witness can see it too. Have you ever seen that sheet of paper before? No. All right, I'm going to let him show it to you for the purpose of refreshing your recollection. I don't want you to read what's on there. If it helps you remember how many places you visited, you may say yes, it refreshed my recollection. If it doesn't help, say no. Go ahead, take a look. There you go. Would you like me to count them? No, I just want you to know. You can hand it back when you are finished looking at it. Now, did that refresh your recollection as to how many places you visited? Yes. All right, how many? 12. Mr. Morris, thank you. And of those 12 places that you visited, how many were you able to purchase alcohol at? I do not remember. Would it refresh your recollection to look at the report again? Yes. Has your memory been refreshed? No. Okay, in that case, I'll proceed. On this particular occasion, on this operation, how many ABC investigators or law enforcement officers were with you in total? I do not remember. Okay. Do you remember if there was anybody other than yourself and law enforcement officers participating on this operation? I didn't understand that question. Was there anybody else other than yourself and the investigators? Did anybody participate in the operation? In other words, another decoy, anybody else? No. So it was just you and the ABC investigators, correct? Yes. At the time when you arrived at this location, do you recall if it was, what time it was? I don't. Okay, when you walked into the location, do you recall how many clerks you saw working? Yes. How many? 2. Okay, what were they doing? They were helping people at the counter. Okay, and did you happen to see how many customers were inside the location? No. Okay, can you estimate? I can't recall. All right. Did you enter by yourself or with somebody? I entered by myself. Okay, and what, if anything, were the investigators doing at the time when you entered the store for the first time? The investigator in the store, or, well, all. Why don't you tell me him and then the others? There was one in the store. The others were waiting in the car. Okay, at some point in time you exited, correct? Yes. Did the other investigators in the car enter the location prior? Excuse me, strike that. Did the other investigators who were initially sitting in the car when you entered for the first time enter the location at any point in time before you exited it for the first time? No. Okay, and what, if anything, do you recall seeing the other investigators inside doing when you entered? I can't recall. Okay, at the time when you approached the counter area, was there anybody in line? Not in the line I was in. Okay, so as you approached the counter, what, if anything, was the first thing that you said to the clerk? I didn't say anything to the clerk. Did the clerk say anything to you? I can't recall. Did you have any conversation with the clerk at all while you were at the counter? I can't recall. Okay, after you exited the location, where did you go? Back to the car. Okay, and did the investigator that was inside the location follow you? I can't recall. Do you remember what happened when you arrived at the car? I met with the other investigators. Okay, and then after that, could you rephrase that? Sure, I'll skip a step. When you re-entered the location, did the other investigators accompany you? Yes. And what was the very first thing you remember seeing when you re-entered the location? The other agents talking to the person who sold me the alcohol. Okay, so there were more than one agent? Yes. Yes. Okay, and by agent, you're referring to law enforcement personnel? Yes. And they were already talking to the one clerk? Yes. And where was this conversation taking place? I believe she was behind the counter. Okay. And were the agents also behind the counter? No. Across from her? Yes. Okay. And what, if anything, was the other clerk doing? Do you recall? I do not remember seeing the other clerk present. Okay, and at some point in time after these investigators concluded their discussion with this clerk, you made an identification. Is that correct? Yes. And where did this identification take place? Behind the counter. Okay, and at the time when you made the identification, as you testified earlier today, what was the clerk doing? Standing there, okay, and what were the other investigators doing? Talking with her, okay, and in response to your identification, did the clerk say anything? No. Did she do anything in response? I do not recall. Okay, I have no further questions. Anything further, Ms. West? Yes, just a few questions, thank you. You indicated that you get paid to be a decoy. Who pays your hourly wage? City of Tustin. And in regard to the identification, at the point when you identified her, were the investigators talking to her? Yes. And they said, who sold you the alcohol? And you said she did. Were the investigators talking to her at that point? No. All right, I have no further questions. Anything further, Mr. Morris? One last question. Sir, could you please look at what's been pre-marked as I believe it's 3B, the bottom picture of the two. When was that picture taken? April 21st. Well, if I could be a little bit more specific, was that picture taken during the time when you made the identification? Yes. Okay, so it is a photo of the identification itself? Yes. Were there any other identifications other than the one that's captured in that photo? No. Okay, that's all. Thank you. All right, I think I have just one question. So do I understand that this Target gift card is something extra given to you for working as a decoy? It's given to me for my participation for being a decoy. So that would be a yes. Yes, sir. Okay. Anything now, Ms. West? No. Mr. Morris? No. Thank you, sir. You may be excused. Do you have your ID? Yes, sir. All right. My next witness is Investigator Randall. Please be seated, state and spell your name for the record. My name is William Randall. The last name is spelled R-A-N-D-A-L-L. Thank you, Ms. West. Thank you. Who are you employed by? I'm employed by the Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control. And what is your position? I'm an investigator. And how long have you been with the department? 9 years. And on March 21st, 2006, were you conducting a decoy operation? Yes. And what was the name of the decoy? It was Mr. White. And who else was working on this decoy operation with you? It would have been a Ms. Russell would have been with me on this particular one. Ms. Russell. I think Tim Lyons was with me too. How do you spell the last name? L-Y-O-N-S. Do you want the spelling of Russell too? No, I have it. All right. During the decoy operation, did you go to the 7-Eleven located at 2115 East Rose Boulevard in the city of West Hills? Yes, we did. What time did you arrive there? Approximately 10 hours. When you arrived at that location, did Mark the decoy enter the store? Yes, he did. Did you enter the store? Yes, I did. Do you recall if you entered before or after him? I do not recall specifically. When you entered the store, where did you go? I was up near the counter, near the sales counter. And what were you doing up there? I was waiting for Mr. White to bring his alcohol up to the sales counter to place on the counter for his purchase. And while you were up near the counter, could you see Mark? Yes, I could. And at some point, did he walk up to the counter? Yes, he did. And what was he carrying anything? Yes, he was. And what was he carrying? I believe it was an 18-pack of Bud Light beer. When he got up to the counter, what did he do? He placed the alcohol on the counter. Was the store very busy? No, it was not. Do you remember how many clerks were working? I do not recall anybody else behind the counter. The only person I was focused on was the one serving Mr. White. The clerk that was helping Mr. White, was it a male or female? A female. Did you subsequently learn that person's name? Yes, I did. And what was that person's name? I would have to refer to my report to refresh my recollection on that. To our other transcript where the attorneys are making their statements. And we'll start with defense attorney. Ready? but I don't think the state has shown that this had any real recency. It certainly wasn't the purpose of the call, no sense of immediacy, casual chit-chat at least a week and perhaps 4 months after the incident at issue, so coupled with a very low necessity for this at this point and a dubious showing of recency, whether we look just to 908.0452 or the court also considers the 904.03 analysis again with necessity and how probative really is this of any relevant or material issue. I think for both those reasons this just ought not be admitted. There is some prejudice to it too. It's got a little bit of a salacious quality. I'm not saying it couldn't be dealt with on cross, but I don't think the state has met the threshold to fill it within the hearsay exception. The state has offered no other, and on balance, I also think that 904.03 would suggest exclusion. Mr. Morris, just very briefly, Judge, the uniqueness of this statement, that is the event of a man of Mr. Stevens' stature showing up or coming out, as the term is, in just a towel, we can infer would have drawn some comment if it would have happened sooner, perhaps as early as June 20th, as counsel may have suggested. But I think the fact that this was in the course of business chit-chat and the statement comes out of the blue, if you will, as far as Mr. Stevens goes, adds to its reliability and to its credibility, and for those reasons, Judge, and for the other reasons that I have mentioned, we'll ask the court allow this as admissible. All right, I'm going to take a few minutes to check a few things. I will be back probably within about 10 minutes with the decision. The court has previously ruled that the statement regarding the brief statement of Sue West that Mr. Stevens had come out in a towel could be admissible subject to appropriate foundation. The appropriate hearsay exception reads is in relevant part as follows. The following statements are not excluded. The statement which describes an event or condition recently perceived by the declarant not in contemplation of pending or anticipated litigation, and while the declarant's recollection was clear. In this case, it's not disputed that the statement was not made in contemplation of any litigation. There does not seem to be a dispute that the statement was made while the declarant's recollection was clear. There is an issue as to whether or not the statement described an event or condition recently perceived. All right, that will conclude our Q&A practice.